welcome to TechNow, the podcast that takes a look at the inside technical stuff about ServiceNow. This is the podcast for ServiceNow administrators and developers. I am Chuck Tomasi. Sitting right across the virtual table from me is none other than...
I am Dave Slusher, developer evangelist with ServiceNow.
Oh, I forgot to say my title, didn't I? I'm a platform architect. Well, it says it right there on the lower thirds if you can't see it.
That's why we set them up.
We're so excited to get going. This is a good one. This is all you, Dave. I'm just going to be the peanut gallery on this one, which is very refreshing once in a while to do.
Yes. We are here to talk about the service portal, the Angular goodness, and everything that kind of comes along with that. So
let me get a desktop screen share going here real fast. If I can quit clicking the wrong buttons and start clicking the right buttons. Share, lock, and go. All right. That's our title slide. Craig is unable to join us this week, unfortunately. So you want me to do the commercial first?
Sure, let's do the commercial.
Okay. I'm just stuck on these internet meme things, so I'm not very creative with the subtitles yet. We're getting there. But the purpose of this is to introduce you to the service portal, and that is what Dave has been spending the last couple of weeks on, getting his hands wet, his feet wet, his hair wet. He's just swimming in this stuff.
Everything is wet at this point.
Even the paint is wet. The code is wet.
Absolutely.
And we are having a lot of fun with it. I, on the other hand, am here to learn as much as you are at this point as we record this. Who knows? Maybe by the time you watch it, I'll have some experience under my belt and have written a couple of applications with it. But if you happen to be online watching this live, we want to hear from you. Put your comments in the community. You can watch it live there. Just search for TechNow, episode 28, share service portal. I don't know why I said that again. I almost titled the show wrong. And we'd love to hear from you, and we will get those in as the show progresses. Also want to remind you to save the date. Next May 7th through 12th is Knowledge 17. It's not too early. I know a lot of your organizations are setting up budgets for 2017. Make sure you get this in the budget. It really helps rather than coming up on May 6th and saying, hey, can I go to Florida? Probably not going to happen. I've tried it. That's when I was young and foolish and didn't understand the ways of organizations. Knowledge is the conference for ServiceNow. We have hands-on labs. We have people like Dave and me that you can talk to and ask questions. We've got CreatorCon. We've got Hack Labs. We've got... It's totally immersive, and it's all around this one platform. Whether you are talking service management, operations management, custom applications, it's all there. It's a whole lot of learning and a whole lot of fun, and you will be up 18 hours and feel like it's not enough.
Frankly, I'm depressed that it's still 10 months away. As crushing as it was between January and April to get ready for it, I can't wait to do it again. So
you got started in January?
Yeah.
It'd be nice if we could start a little earlier before Christmas and use some of that Christmas holiday time to prepare. But and then there's always usually a release of software that comes up right before Knowledge that we have to retrofit everything to. So, I think that's part of our QA process sometimes. Let's see if the solution consultants can figure it all out. All right, this is all on you, Dave. Lead us through the agenda, and then we'll get on with the demo.
All right, so I'm going to talk just for a moment about Service Portal and just give you kind of a brief overview, and then the bulk of our time, I'm going to sit and walk you through kind of what exists in Service Portal, the page designer, and then the part that I've been spending the vast majority of my time in, which is the widget editor, right? So you're actually building the code itself of a widget. And I'm going to throw this in. Everyone seems to love this quote, and I'm going to credit the guy who came up with it, which is our colleague Chris Malloy, who said, "Your first day working with Angular will be the worst day of your development career, and your second day will be your best day of your development career." And that is, I think, very consistent. So I'm going to kind of show you a little about how to get started, and maybe we can learn some of that. So next slide, please, sir.
You bet.
So let's talk a little about the Angular system as it exists in the Service Portal. So when you get the Service Portal environment, you're getting a pre-configured Angular system that comes down. So if you are coming at this as a experienced Angular developer, it will seem a little bit weird because some of the things you do, like declaring an application, and some of the things that you do to just make an Angular app work, you're actually those are abstracted away from you. Service Portal is already doing some of that work for you, so you're kind of starting almost in the middle. So Angular is built into the system. So what you're looking at when you're looking at Service Portal and when you're building a widget or using a widget, it is driven by Angular. It's not 100% stock Angular. It's been modified to have a coupling with our system. So that is a thing to be aware of. Just not that it's good or bad. It just is what it is. You might want to be aware of the portability of your knowledge in and out, right? If you're learning it on ServiceNow and then you go to do a non-ServiceNow Angular project, you might have to sand some edges of your understanding and vice versa, right? The example I always use is that I learned Ruby and Rails at the same time, and then went to do some pure Ruby and realized that some of the concepts I thought were Ruby were Rails concepts. So it would be very similar if you learn this at the same time. So you have basically a drag and drop graphical page editor, and I will show that very, very shortly. That lets you can take a page and components a page out of widgets, and you can do that. It's very much like setting up the widgets on a WordPress blog or anything like this. You can compose multiple ones. You can set the layout. You can make them bigger or smaller. You could have sidebars and main pages and etc. And I'll show you how to do that. There are like when you get just a baseline Helsinki instance, and I probably should have mentioned this very first. Helsinki is when this came in. So that's the release version that you'll need to be on to have the Service Portal. So
quick note about that also. It's not the plugin is not activated by default in Helsinki. So you're going to have to activate the plugin. And I believe the plugin is Service Portal, Enterprise Service Management, which also activates a couple others, like the designer and some other things.
Right, that is the one. If you activate the Service Portal Enterprise, that's the one. The best sort. You could, rather than going one by one, if you do that, you'll have everything you need.
Well, and some of them are dependencies, so you can't do it in the wrong order.
Yeah. So So when you get your Helsinki instance, you'll have 20 or so widgets that already exist there. A few example ones and a few that are actually a few that are useful out of the box, and then one that is just pure fun, and I'll show you that one too. So I mentioned the Angular environment is integrated with ServiceNow platform. So so you can from your server scripts, which I will show you how to do this, you can do glide record queries, right? Glide record is in scope, glide system is in scope. So when you're doing your server-side code, you're in a ServiceNow scripting environment. So that's not everything that you would expect to be there in scope in a business rule or a script include is there. So that's kind of the secret sauce that bridges the gap between the data of your instance and then your Angular UI.
We don't have to write all the REST APIs back and forth to make this happen.
Correct. And so I've already mentioned it's not standard Angular. The widget editor, we'll see this in a moment when I pop it open. One of the beautiful things about the widget editor is you're getting an actual running instance of your widget real time in that. So you're going to have multiple panes, and one of those panes is your widget actually doing the thing. So you're doing all the full stuff. You're getting the data. It's executing. So that is extremely handy to just have your code right next to, in the same window as your widget.
Easier to test and debug.
It is extremely efficient and kind of pleasurable. So with that,
I'm going to try and turn this screen control over to you.
All right, I will just pop it up, and here we go. I think I've even figured out how to not do the infinite tunnel.
Lock it on your screen, and we should be good to go.
And all right, am I on there?
You're on there.
Okay, excellent. All right, so I've filtered this down to Service Portal. So I'm going to show.
Do me a favor and knock that up another size or two with the.
Okay, let's do that. Tell you.
Hopefully, it'll still all fit. That's good.
Okay.
Nice.
All right.
Man like me can now read it.
All right. So let's go, and I'm going to just kind of show you. I'm going to create a new page just to show what that page editor is like. So let's call it TechNow 28 page. TechNow 28.
Yeah.
Submit it, and then what I'm gonna do is open that thing in the page editor.
There's a
So
UI
open
action. Nice. Yep.
Yeah, we'll open in the page editor. Oh, you know what I want? I want the page designer. Sorry.
Welcome to Page Editor. What's the difference between the Page Editor and Page Designer since you did that?
I'm not 100%. I think Page Editor is basically the portal page that you're seeing, and Page Designer is kind of the laid out page.
Okay.
So the in the context of how it would sit in the portal, I think is what the Page Editor is. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure.
Stay tuned for part 2 of this series.
Yeah, I've been so focused on widgets that's I actually have never actually put one of these things all the way through the portal and put it, in final view of how you would look if you were having to sit beside a number of other pages in the portal. I've actually never hooked it all the way up to that point at this point. So at this
you
point,
started with a blank palette and you just dropped a container on there.
Blank container, which is really just an abstract. It just means I can hold something. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do, and this is what we're looking at here, is basically the Twitter Bootstrap concept, which is the 12-column layout. So if you've ever used Bootstrap, that is exactly what we're looking at. This is kind of a manifestation of it. So what this lets you do, let's start with, say, a 9x3. So what we're going to do here is we now have two containers here. We have the 9-column and the 3-column layout.
Okay.
Now I'm going to pick my favorite of everything, the breakout game, and drop it in here. And then let's pick, anything else, the calculator, and we can drop it over here. And I think, yeah, I may have done that. I thought I did the 9x3.
I thought you did too.
All right. So.
Oh, you know what? I wonder if making it bigger in the font kind of changed the layout.
Oh, it may very well be. I think.
See.
Yeah.
So skinny it down again a little bit.
Make it one smaller and see if that. And now I see it. Yeah, that's it. That was it. Actually, the responsive relaying out was in effect.
That's a feature, people. That's a feature.
Right. So there we go. So there's the 9x3. So at this point, and this could be anything, right? This could be any. You have some that are more and less goofy. You have KB topics or, etc. So by the way, this is me playing Breakout right there. So. I spent probably half an hour on a plane one time playing that.
I can't play and talk at the same time.
I know it's very, 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 very difficult. But it's actually so somewhere in there, there's just a bunch of JavaScript code that is actually building this breakout game, and so it's running live. You
mentioned this, and we'll take a look at it in a little bit. But you can build your own widgets. Is it possible to distribute that so that I could build a widget, maybe a color breakout or something different?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, is
that something we dump on the share portal through update sets, or how do we see that in the future?
I think you could do all these things. You could build it in a scoped application and publish it that way. If you were an enterprising partner, you could go and you could build yourself a scoped application that contained a set of widgets in it, right? And then just apply that, and then they would be available to you. If you wanted to, you could come down here. You could come in here and fork this. You can clone widget, right? So I could clone it right now and create a copy of that's my copy, and then I could start taking this code and change it. And I could change all the colors, and I could change anything I wanted about it. You could put an icon of your face for the ball or whatever you wanted to do. So all of that stuff is available to you. So you have the ability. Hey, that's been doing really good while we weren't watching. So this is kind of how you can use these widgets. Like I was saying, you can compose yourself a page. So you could imagine kind of like the home page concept. So you want to have one page that is where you want people to be able to do, say, the majority of their work. And so you set them up, the widgets that you want them to have, whether they're built in, whether they're already built in or whether there's something that you develop yourself. And I don't even know what this one is. Ticket location. I don't know what that is. I probably shouldn't do random ones. I don't know what they do. And but you'll notice that there's all of these guys in here. there's actually, I was saying a few dozen. It looks like there's probably about 50 or so. There's a few down here that I have built. There are some that that just come with it. But requested items. This one I have looked at before,
So
but I
this is
don't
pretty
have.
straightforward. Drag some widgets onto a page. What do you do when you're done with the page?
Then what you can do is, so let me go ahead and let me put something. Let me put back up there.
Yeah, obviously our portal's going to be more than just one.
Right. So then you could save this page.
Yeah.
And then over here, this is I clicked preview. This is now the live preview of what this page will look like if it's out running, on the portal itself. Mm-hmm. So this is it in the portal environment, with the portal nav, and this is what it would look like. Now, one of the nice things when you're in this preview mode is that you notice up here. So everything from this little white line up here, this is like preview menu, right? So in production, published, this white line is the top of your page. When you're up here in this mode, you can now, it has some defaults to show you the different form factors. So we're looking at desktop view. This is what it would be like in tablet view, and this is what it would be like in phone view. So you can kind of get a feel for for how it decomposes into each of those, into each of those form factors. Right. In this case, you get the menu bar moves over, et cetera, et cetera.
Nice.
So very easily you can set this up and you can say, oh, well, this doesn't actually look very good. It's not actually usable on the phone. Maybe this is not the thing that I want to do. Or it's just barely usable on the tablet, et cetera, et cetera. So it gives you the opportunity to do all that stuff. And then another way, if we come down here and look at the page itself, so I've set up this page. If I do the try it over here, this is actually, these are all links that will take me, these are various portals that have this included. So if I do this, this is actually that page, right? So this is a distributable link at this point. And so these are all just various ways of kind of working with that page. And so again, you can compose it however you want. You can build whatever functionality you want into it, be it out of the box or if it's something that you have to build to get there. So at this point, you can, from here, you could go back to the editor. You could change something about it. You can get rid of this and put something else on there. KB most viewed, etc. And so, and a lot of these, some of these it just depends on whether or not, the reason we're getting the no preview available, I'll show you in a second, is whether or not it has a preview mode. I believe, so if I come over to preview, will it also say preview not available? No, it's actually, yeah, it's not previewing. So you set that up in the widget whether or not it has a preview mode available. It's basically just a true false. It's a checkbox that says whether it has it.
Why would you not want a preview?
I think maybe if the thing that you're doing doesn't have default data that would make any sense, or it doesn't have a default action that would make any sense other than in published version, then maybe you would turn that off. Everything that I'm doing, and so everything that I have done, I have always turned that back on. So it's a thing that you can enable. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and just start creating a widget. Right. So that's kind of what you do to compose a page out of the widgets. Now let's say you're in the situation where you want to come and create a new widget. So you come over here to the widgets page and click new, and you'll get yourself, and we'll call it TechNow. Which I think I can have spaces in this top thing, but I'm going to use the same thing.
The name you can, the ID no.
I'm just going to save this thing, and down here you'll note a few things. So controller is C. Well, this will come in play a little bit. That has preview. This is the thing I was just talking about. If you click this, it will have a preview mode, and you can define, if you want to define some demo data, you can. So I could define, say, a JSON object that would be demo data for the preview.
Is that little plus and minus the window size, or is that to add?
I think that's the
objects like the okay.
Yeah, that's the window size.
For a minute, I thought that was like the REST API thing where you could start adding fields. Like,
right. Yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead and submit this guy just to create it, and I'm gonna come over here. Now that we've got it, I'm gonna open this in the widget editor, which I think will reuse my page over there. Yes. Yep. So this is an absolute default empty widget environment. So you can. So this UI has some neat features. So
this is just a re-rendering of that other page, so you can see things a little clearer. Correct?
yes, if you come over here, you'll see that
Plus-
all those same things are here, right?
Yeah.
The HTML template, the server script, the client control.
The big winner is your favorite with that widget preview on the right.
Yes, and so all these things are turnable on and off dynamically.
Turnable on and offable.
So
Nice.
you can show any of this. You can turn, you can, and I do this quite frequently. Is I need more real estate to look at a thing. You can turn the preview off. You can do, a lot of times it's actually, it's a small UI affordance, but the fact that you've got all of your code right here, and because all three pieces of this code interact. I'm actually going to talk about that organization here in a second. But the fact that you're looking at all three pieces of code at the same time is, it may not jump out at you as being as huge as it is, but it is extremely valuable. As opposed to having an environment where you're just looking at the server script and then you flip over and you look at the client script. Right? The fact that you've got all three in your face at the same time makes it much easier to kind of keep yourself oriented in where you are.
It's similar to that level of productivity you gain from Studio.
Yes, exactly.
When you had to go write, say, a Glide Ajax client script, and you had your client side and you had your server side, and you had to keep flipping between the two records, and then you had to go test it, and it was kind of a pain. Now, with Studio, you can have the two tabs open. What did I call that method? Oh, that's right. I have to do an add param for the this and that add. And it makes it a lot easier. This is even better because it's all on the same screen. You don't even have to switch tabs.
Right. It's on the same screen and with the thing happening. The thing live running in front of you. So, so I'm going to go start. So let me talk a little too about. This was helpful to me. I actually started. When I started doing the widgets, I started without a lot of background, and I basically just jumped in and kind of try to swim to the shore. We talk about getting your feet wet. I just went in up to my eyeballs and then kind of figured it out. What I didn't the underpinning I didn't have early on is the fact that when you're looking at these three things here, you are actually looking at MVC. So you've got a server script that will run on the server side, and almost always what you're going to do here is you're going to fill this with data. So you're going to fill this with data. The server script will then kind of push to the client side. You've got this client script that is the controller. So this is the model. This is the controller. It coordinates the data. It's in between the model and the view. Right? The model and the view don't have direct knowledge of each other. This kind of coordinates it. It has a reference to both, and it passes the data from the model to the view, and you tend to put your logic in here. So if you've got click handler, event handlers, we're going to show building some of those. This is kind of coordinating the stuff, and then over here is the view. So you define in HTML what you want your user interface to look like. And so then, because this is Angular, you get some directives that will do kind of the Angular magic to that. But at this point, that's what you're doing here, is you're building view. So let me talk a little about some of the built-in objects. So when you come over here and do the server script, you have this object called data. And so the first thing I'm going to do is just create. Data is very much like
a big empty object, right?
Yes, very much like Scratchpad, Workflow Scratchpad. Yeah, business. Anything like that.
Okay.
It's where it's an arbitrary reference to a variable. You can fill it with anything you want, and then that will be available. So this data incidence is now going to be available down here. It will automatically be a part of this scope, and I'm going to go ahead and put this in here because I sometimes forget to do that. Angular has a little bit of a magic in that there's a bunch of predefined objects that are in scope down here, and by adding them into this function, which is really just the controller initialization function, you make it available. So at this point, scope, you do that, and scope already kind of exists. And when you do this now, I can now reference scope. Now scope has a reference to data. So
scope.data.incidence would be a reference to your array.
Is a reference to this array right here. Now, here's some of the magic that's going to happen. Is this scope object right there?
Yeah.
When you come over here, in your view, this is implied. So when I come over here,
It's
this whole thing has a implicit reference to scope. So when I come over here and I do data.incidents, this thing, this view,
tag, but
yeah, I'm not. This means nothing because I'm just doing it raw out of the thing.
Okay.
But this data incidence is this because it automatically dereferences. This is part of the scope in here, and the scope is part of this. So that's one of the kind of tricky things is some of this feels a little bit like magic. But when I talked about how the service portal integration wires this up for you, this already exists for you. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is actually start doing some stuff. So I'm going to cut and paste a big chunk here because watching somebody type out a glide query is like watching paint dry. So I'm just going to do all of this right here.
Oh, we don't have the macro editor like we do in the other script editor?
I don't know. Maybe we do. I just went ahead and got this set up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to query on incident. And I mentioned before, you are in you are in the full scripting environment, right? If you need to do something in glide system, if you need to do get user ID, which I have done in other things, it is here, right? So glide system is in this thing. If I wanted to pass a reference to this,
data.user,
boom, the view now has the user ID that comes from glide system. It's that simple, right? So you can do this kind of activity, and so at this point, I got a simple query on incident, active records, get me 10 of them, order by the most recent, so get me the 10 most recent, query it, and then I'm going to go ahead and loop over it. Now, one of the things that that I do, and I don't know if this is the best practice, what I do typically is I convert this glide record. I don't pass the whole glide record down here because I think I'm not 100% sure that that's the best way to do it because at that point you've got some of that glide overhead. What I typically do is I'm just pulling out just the values that I want.
I think that is best practice because some of these glide records can be
be huge, right?
It doesn't sound like a lot, but when you start getting lots and lots of them, it can slow down the whole experience. So you don't need to pass the whole record. Again, very, very similar to like a glide Ajax experience. Only pass back what you need.
Right, and the other thing that I'm doing here is I'm taking care to make sure that I'm doing get display value so that I'm getting a string of everything, so that I'm actually getting the stringified, which sometimes, on elements, glide elements, you may not be getting exactly what, you have to take care that you're getting the data type that you think you are, right? Because the data type of every record is glide element. It's not string, it's not int. So
we've talked about that on previous TechNow episodes, so go back and watch episodes 5, 6, and whatever it is.
So I'm just looping through. I'm taking my incident. I'm creating a new little JSON object in the loop.
Yeah.
I'm getting the number, short description, sysid, and the updated on date. Adding those to my JSON. Adding them to my JSON, pushing them into the array. So at this point, I now have that array. That array comes down. It's in the scope. It's now available over here for the HTML template.
So you don't necessarily have to do anything with that in the client script.
No. No, it implicitly has already moved over there. So I'm going to do
controller. You just went from model to view.
Yeah, exactly. So there is a reference in here, but I don't have to do anything with it. I don't have to make that available to it.
Now comes some of the Angular fun where you get to put in ng tags, or where does that come from?
Well, here's what I'm going to show here. Is I'm just going to do something extremely simple.
We all know basic HTML tables, but here comes some magic that you may not have seen before.
What I'm going to do is, and in fact, we did an initial walkthrough, and I was going a little too crazy too early. So I wanted to build an example here that is just dead simple, so that you can kind of get a better idea of what's happening. So I'm going to show you.
Step.
Yeah,
I need it.
So what we'll do is this incident.number. So what I'm going to do here, and this is something that I have. This is where now we're starting to get into the Angular magic. Incidents, data.incidents. So now we're doing. Get rid of the client script for a little bit. What we're doing now is we're going to basically execute this thing, this element, and everything contained within that element. We're going to do that basically on this, which is basically a for each loop. So we're going to loop over data incidents. We will have a variable named incident, which is filled with that data that came from here. And now we have incident. And we're going to do this once for everything in there.
repeat, it goes in the TR tag.
Right.
And then what you want to render is in your TD tag.
Right. Whatever you put ng repeat in will be repeated. If you put it in the table tag, you would have 10 tables. So it's not specific.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's not specific to any HTML element. It'll do anything. But then what it will do
just the way you wanted to render it this time.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
But it could be, and this could be a UL and an LI. And it would work exactly the same way. So at that point, you see this kind of this double brace templating. This will basically interpolate. It'll take the value that you put in here and interpolate it to to the UI. So at this point, now we should just see, if I do this, put that preview on and I hit return, and we should see a list of incident numbers. So there you go. This is now happening. With this, we're passing data incidents in here. We're filling our array. The array is the reference is passed there implicitly. Data is now available to the scope, and we're doing the ng repeat, and we're filling in based on that. So already these are the most 10 recent events on that system. Okay, so already you see that at this point we're actually getting records and displaying them to the UI, and we have 10 lines of HTML and 20 lines of server
side. Yep.
So now let's get a little more stuff in here. So
sure. You want more than just a number. You want your short description.
I'll do that. It's
It'd be really nice if we had autocomplete there. Hey, look, I see this stuff in the data.
Speaking of autocomplete, you do actually have autocomplete in some of this. I'll show you in a little bit. That you have autocomplete maybe plays. I'm gonna go ahead and copy and paste just to.
Yeah.
And let's call this sys. We use the sys updated on. Yep. And one little trick. This is a widget editor UI, is that if you save it and you're showing the preview, it will reload the whole page. So you have to reload the page to get your updated code. You don't have to reload it to get new data, but you do have to reload it to get your updated code. If your widget is showing, it'll automatically do that. If your widget is not showing, it won't automatically load your page. So I try to remember to just keep my widget on when I'm editing, and it just saves me having to remember to reload the page. So do that.
Click the eyeball just to refresh.
Gotcha. Right. So notice that we did that, and now we've got the short description. Now we've got the updated on. Now that's a little hard to read because it doesn't have that in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of CSS right here. So I'm just going to add the border in because wherever the default CSS style doesn't have that, so I'm going to add that into the table. So I want to have the border. So we'll just add the border. So you have the ability to add some specific CSS in there. And when you do that, that'll get picked up.
You can make that nicer with padding and alignment and whatever else you want.
Exactly. So you can do anything kind of like that you want. So at this point, what I want to do, let me get rid of this so I can do that. And I think I'm going to go ahead and just close the server script for good because I don't think we're going to do anything else interesting to that. So we don't even need to look at that again. So at this point, kind of take it as a given that we're getting these 10 incidents every time. And so I'm going to, at this point, kind of start focusing on the client script, and we're going to start working just on the view and the controller. So let's add a little bit more stuff. So what I want to do is I want to show some dynamic stuff. This is really where Angular excels. So like showing a static view.
So far this is a so what? I made a table.
Right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just show this thing up front. Sort by, and we're going to order field. Add this thing up here, which is going to show us what we're sorting by.
Okay.
do that so it'll stand out and give it a little thing. And what we're going to do over here is we're going to create that in the
model.
In the scope.
In the scope. Okay.
So what we're going to do
over
here.
You don't need the server. You don't need the server to inject data. You can. Okay.
So we'll do a default here. And so let's say we'll call it by number by default. So if I just save this here.
The little curly braces automatically know whether or not it's data from data incident or not.
What they're going to do is when you get to those curly braces, they're going to evaluate this as an expression. So what this is going to do is this is going to automatically become a variable named order field, and it's going to look for that variable in the scope. This is one of the things, actually, this is a concept that has taken me a little while to get to, is, for example, like if I wanted to do something programmatic in here, a lot of times I was trying to do this templating thing in here. What it took me a little while to get to is, even though you've got ng repeat and you've got a string here, incident in data incidents, every one of these things, this will all be interpreted as variables. Incident is a variable, data incidents is interpreted as a variable. So assume, even though these guys are strings, the Angular system, the Angular interpreter, is going to interpret all this as code. Gotcha. So this is something that's taken me a little while to grok, and so
it's kind of like PHP-ish.
Yeah, something like that.
Even Jelly in that way. It's interpreted before it's presented in its final form. Because ultimately your browser just knows HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
Right. So note that variable kind of gets passed up there. Now what I'm going to do is show. Let me go ahead and so let me put a thing in here. I'm going to put a button. And let's do empty ones. So let's say
TR around the THs.
Chuck. Do a T. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a button on this guy. And actually, do you notice that if this is invalid, I kind of like that it shows you where you're invalid. If it's not valid XHTML, it'll show you over here in this view. I like that a lot. So what I'm going to do over here, and let's just make a button on the short description field. So I'm going to make a button. And let's call it short description. So at this point, I'll do that. I cannot type. And when I do that, we'll see the button up there. Now, right now, that button doesn't actually do anything.
Sure.
So what I'm going to do is
you need a little handler on there.
I'm going to add a handler. ng-click is the way you define a handler for that. And I'm going to call this change sort. And let's go ahead and, so one of the things that was confusing me actually when I set this up is I forgot to put those single ticks in there. And in fact, the whole thing about what's interpreted as variables and what's interpreted as strings and etc. Yeah. If you don't have those strings, if you don't have those ticks in there, it will actually be calling this with the value of a variable named short description, which is nothing.
Yeah, it doesn't exist right now.
Right. So I found that out kind of the hard way. So now what I'm going to do is add a very simple handler in here. I'm going to define a function in the scope.
Okay.
Called change sort.
Change sort. Right.
And by the way, note that it's auto-completing the one thing it knows that it has in the scope now.
Yeah.
And we're going to define a function.
Yeah.
It has a parameter. Call it field. All we're going to do in this is we're going to, in the scope, I'm going to make the order field equal field. So when we call that click, whatever parameter we pass into it, that's going to be what we change that to.
Okay, so it's initialized as number. We're changing it to
short description. It to short description when we click that.
Okay.
So we'll watch when we do this. You'll note that we click this, and that value, as soon as we click it, that value has changed. So So we're now.
Okay.
So you see
Wait,
that happen to me.
Do that again. You gotta.
All right, I'm gonna have to reload it because
Yeah.
we're gonna do a little more stuff here in a second. So
it started as number. Okay.
right, watch that, and then
Yep. Okay.
as soon as I click it, and as soon as I change it in here, that takes effect.
Yeah.
So essentially, as the data in the scope changes, you'll see that effect. And like under the hood, essentially there are a bunch of watcher objects. So the fact that this guy right here is using order field, it registers a watcher on this. So when this changes, it knows immediately. So there's no polling or anything like this. This guy will know immediately when that happens. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do 2 more buttons. I'm going to cut and paste these guys just to reduce.
You want to change it to the other values?
I'm going to change it. Yeah, I'm going to do the same thing. Ugh. All right, let's get rid of this for a minute. Let's get rid of everything so I've got the whole screen. And we're just going to cut the button twice. Put them in here. And you know why that button was rendering weird? Because I've got it outside of the TH. So let's put him in the right spot.
You need to beautify your HTML there, buddy. You got a red TH and a red TR. You're not valid yet.
Right, and so just because I don't have the.
You got a TR on. Now you're inside an ng repeat. Somehow you copied like a line and a half.
All right, so at this point, let me copy my buttons here. And we're just going to call that same button.
Yep.
So we're going to call this number.
Lines 5 and 6 are getting weird on you.
Call this one updated.
Yep.
Updated. So we need to call this
the actual
field that is in the JSON, because this is going to get. Well, I can call it updated here, but we're going to begin using this very shortly.
That's just a label for the button.
Right. So let's do this.
Okay. Your HTML still whacked.
Oh, you know what I did?
Lines 5 and 6 are messing you up. You get a TR that doesn't close. There you go. And then throw another one between 9 and 10.
9 and 10.
Or 8 and 9, excuse me. Another /TR between 8 and 9.
All right.
Not sure where that extra. Oh, there it is.
Is there an extra?
You got button right before your THs. Right there, and next one down. Does the exact same thing.
Okay.
Those are hard to see.
Right.
Okie doke. Now we have headers, and we have buttons that should sort us, right?
Well, they won't sort us yet.
So
what we're doing now.
TR on line 9, but okay.
Okay. So note that we're changing. Depending on what we click.
Oh,
we're changing.
line 5. You need an R on your TR.
Okay.
Right. Yay!
All good.
We got HTML now.
Okay, so note that this thing now changes, based on what we click.
It tells you what you're sorting by, but it doesn't actually do anything yet. I think that's your next step, right?
That is my next step. Now, this is one of those things that is truly kind of seems magical about Angular. I'm going to
put like order by somewhere in here, right?
Exactly. I'm going to, down here on my ng repeat, I can give this a directive, and I can basically give this a filter. You can do things like you can filter by the value. Or what I'm going to do is I'm going to filter by, and this is another one that tripped me up. When you do this, I'm ordering by. I could say order by, and I could have a literal string that would be the field of that. In this case, I want the value of the order field. Nice. So I want to order by whatever is contained in here. And again, let me open the client script. And so number or whatever that we put in here, that's the thing we want to be ordering by.
Okay.
So at this point, if we come over here,
starting to see why you geek out on this.
Order by, and I did something wrong in that order field. What did I do wrong?
It wasn't a capital B or anything, was it? Not order by.
Let's see.
It's not camel case, is it?
Not camel case.
Okay.
Did
Did you
take
did you
that
have me
away?
copy and paste it somewhere else?
I do. So let me. So there's a thing. Let me copy and paste the one that I have, and let's see.
I so want to see this. We just have a few minutes left.
So we'll go ahead and copy my one in here, which looks to me exactly the same.
Well, it's camel case. Order by. Told you.
Okay. All right. So at this point, now what we should do is, because of this, we should now see this is ordered by number by default. And when we see this, we should see this change, and we should see the ordering change. And notice that it did, in fact, reorder all this data just now.
Oh, sure enough.
Change it by updated.
So fast. Yeah.
So again, there's a watcher on all this stuff, and when this changes, it just immediately takes effect, and we're seeing a different change in that.
That would be a whole lot of labor if you did it some way else, like the native client script on a browser.
Now let's open this up. This is the sum totality of all the code that exists here.
Yep.
So so now we're dynamically resorting this with essentially changing this value and using that in the filter by, and that's all it takes to do that. Now I'm going to add one more thing that is shockingly true magic. And this is there's this thing called SPUtil, Service Portal Util, that comes for free. It's kind of, again, this is a ServiceNow built thing, right? This is not, this doesn't exist out of this.
Sure.
Outside of this.
You don't need $SPUtil?
No, you don't.
Okay.
It's
trust you on that.
Okay, sorry, that sounded combative. But no, you don't. It's just defined as that way. And so there's a function called record watch, and what you can do is you can essentially say, I want this controller to watch data of this thing. So in my scope, I'm going to watch the incident table.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to define a callback. And so you could define something that happens, based on the data that changes. In my case, all we want to do is just do this update of scope, which is saying we just want to update the data of the scope. So if the underlying data, which essentially is a call to this guy. So they're saying if the data changes, if record watch notices a change to the data, then record watch is going to call this guy again. So
sweet.
We're going to do that.
And please tell me that's nicely documented on the developer portal.
It's somewhere on there. I found it somewhere. I think I found it on serviceportal.io, or I think I found it on the doc site or somewhere in there.
Okay.
So is this my window? Yes. So let me go over here. Upgrade SSD in laptop. I'm going to change this one. This is like one of my favorite things about this whole deal is.
At no time do you hit refresh on that Service Portal.
I'm just going to save it.
Oh,
and it changes over here. Now,
that's awesome.
The other thing is, so let's do it again. So I'm sorting on that, right? Baby needs a new pair of shoes. Let's change that to ZZZ. Baby needs a new pair of shoes. And
sleeping. And it goes to the bottom of the list.
Changes in its sorts because we're sorting on short description. Yep. So that SPUtil is. You can set up anything you want to do, and you're now responding live to the data of the underlying ServiceNow system, and you'll see that reflected with extremely low latency in your live running widget. So that to me is, it feels a little mind-boggling, but essentially, to be honest, I don't exactly know how that's implemented. Somewhere in here, this util has got some hook into the database to figure out when that data changes. So I don't think it's a poll. Like I said, most of the stuff that's happening in here is driven by some kind of watcher on something else. Yeah. So your all these fields that use the model are watching the model, and so when the model changes, it knows something about them. So this is at this point, all this stuff is happening simultaneously, right? And if you change something else, you're going to see it immediately over here, and the sort will happen based on the new data, and etc. So this to me is fascinating, extremely fun stuff to play with. The fact that we've been doing these webinars using Service Portal means that I had no choice but to do it, which frankly is all I've ever wanted to do since Knowledge, is do nothing but do Service Portal widgets all day, every day, because it is so fun, it's so cool. And so the last couple, at this point I've had about 2 weeks. When I did a webinar for Helsinki showing this stuff. At the time I did it, the initial thing that I set up, I had only been working with it for like 2 days at that point. There's one more bit of functionality I want to show kind of before we get out of here. Is there's the ability in here. If you'll notice down here, there's a field in your widget definition. So I'm back to the widget definition. I'm going to go ahead and reload form because you'll notice everything has changed.
Yeah.
You see your
record watcher is saying
exactly. Like whatever this is that showed that is probably the same way that SPUtil record watch. It's probably the same mechanism underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
So down in dependencies, you can define in your widget app over here. You can define external libraries that this depends on, and you can use that to add more functionality. So you can come down here, and these are the ones that are defined automatically. But let's say you needed a slider in there. You could just add the slider to the dependencies of this. ng sortable is one that I have actually been using, and this builds in some sorting and some drag and drop. So if you needed to do something like that, you can just build it. You can add that in there, save it, and now you've got references to widget dependencies down here.
How do you know what you can access out of those dependencies?
That you for example, you would have to go and look up the docs on ng sortable, and that is you can do that. So ng sortable is a package that's out there. It's on GitHub, and so this is that.
Gotcha.
So here are the docs for ng sortable.
Okay.
So almost all these dependencies in here, these are external libraries that exist, and you have the ability. You don't have to just use. These are the ones that are built in. This ng material. This is one that I added to this system. Right. This was not. This is not one that was built in. This is one that I added.
When you're doing the slush bucket thing, is that copying in this code to your final page, or is it referencing it?
It's adding a reference of this dependency into your. So there's a many-to-many relationship between your widget and the dependencies. So your widget can have however many, and then however many widgets can depend on any given dependency.
Okay.
So let me show you too this ng material. This is one that I added to my system. You won't find this on a default system, but I went through and I just defined it. And all I did was define two things: the reference to the JavaScript include and the reference to the CSS include. And note too, these are not even hosted on my machine. You can come over here.
That's what I was talking about. Is it pulling all this in? But you're doing it by reference, not by copy.
In this particular case, you have the ability. To set it up as either over here in the JavaScript include. You can set it up as either an URL. Yep. Or you can set it up as a UI script. So you can define a UI script and you can cut and paste a code, which is kind of how, like, if you could do Angular prior to Helsinki, right? But it involved importing the library yourself. So just the same way, the same way if you wanted to do any of that, you could. There's a strong case to be made for bringing in a specific version of the UI script, kind of freezing your UI to that, and then not depending on this other thing.
Yep.
And there's also a case to be made for just the sheer simplicity of putting it up this way, and then it does, your hit to Google APIs and it pulls down this library. Both are valid ways, and it just kind of depends on the needs of your particular, your particular use case of setting that up.
So now that you've built those dependencies, what can we do with our little widget?
So now that I put it in there, so I could now use ng sortable, and I can use the directives from ng sortable, and I could make this. I could make, say, my table drag and droppable. And so, so if I added some of the stuff in there, then that would be enough to drag it and drop it. And then I would come in here and I would build my handlers, like my order changed handler. I would define this on the controller. I would put some code in there, and then it would do whatever I wanted it to do when it changed. So, any of these libraries that you wanted to add, you have the ability to do that, and then you kind of look up to the library what it's done and how to use it. You know, each one will have its own set of documentation.
Neat. There's a lot to digest. And this is just part one.
This is part one. So that was a very good call to go for the more simple demo, because there is so much here. And I know like when I do these demos, I have a tendency to talk extremely fast because there's so much I want to talk about that it's
yeah.
I cannot get the stuff through my mouth fast enough to talk about it because I'm so excited to get to it. So
if you want, we'll post this widget up to the page that contains this on the community, so you can download it and put it on your own system and play with it. Dave didn't do anything terrifically magical here. You could probably even rewatch the video and type along with him, but to save some typing and maybe some typos, we'll put it there as well.
Yeah, I'll leave a reply to that, and because this is simple enough, I don't think we need a full repo. I will just paste these, 33 lines of, I guess 50 lines.
Yeah, we can even export the thing as an XML and attach it. And
sure.
You can download that, and I think that'll be easier for import. All right, very cool.
All right,
Dave, thank you very much.
Any questions from the community or any other questions from you, Chuck?
I just have one in the community from Nathan Firth. He says, the Breakout 404 is by far the best widget. Something tells me he wrote that.
That could very well be the case. So,
in all transparency, Nathan used to be a ServiceNow employee till, about April of 2016, a few months ago, and he went off and started his own company, so good for him.
Around Service Portal, I do believe.
I do believe. That's his specialty.
Isn't Nathan the one behind ServicePortal.io? I believe he is.
Pretty sure.
Yes.
Pretty sure. If not, he's very closely related to that.
Yes, some chunk of what I have looked for to figure this out for myself is at ServicePortal.io. So that is a good reference if you want to know more about it.
Speaking of references, let me flip up the end of the slides here. Stop sharing. Get you unlocked.
I may have to, let me unshare. All right.
Yep. Now we can see your face again. Screen share.
This is not a product endorsement. But I am perhaps fueled by something.
Okay, so our takeaways. Do you want to go through these, or shall I?
Sure. So, as was noted, the Service Portal gives you a pre-integrated, pre-built Angular environment that you can use to expose ServiceNow internals to an Angular UI. So you don't have to declare a controller. You don't have to define an application. A lot of that overhead has already been done for you.
Great.
Next point.
Number 2. There
are aspects that you're looking at that are not quite core Angular. They're not really extensions so much as like to expand on point 1. If you're doing your own Angular work from the ground up, you're going to have to do some things that are not here. So do be aware that you're not looking at standard stock Angular as you're
learning
this.
Like the SP-util thing.
Yep. The SP-util does not exist in that, and you would have to define an application and a controller, and there's some extra boilerplate code you need to define an Angular app. You can bring in external libraries. There are a dozen or so that are already built in, and it is very, very easy to add your own dependencies. That ng material that I was working with is not a default library, but it's one that I wanted to work with, and it was very easy to set up the dependency myself. And I did that. Again, that was like 24 hours into this. It's still in my worst day of dealing with Angular. And to be honest, I wasn't 100% sure that was going to work. I just went in the thing, I clicked it, and said, what is going to happen if I click this thing? And what is going to happen if I add these external libraries? Will it work? And it did. So that was pretty gratifying. So
and I think you just took everybody's first 24 hours and made them a whole lot more pleasant with this video. There's your reference information, ladies and gentlemen. We mentioned a whole bunch of these. Of course, you can go to serviceportal.io, our wiki, our doc site, YouTube, Now support. We have a channel for TechNow on there if you haven't seen it before. We also have them listed on the community. Just search for TechNow. You'll see the complete episode listing kept up to date. And we are ready to go. If you want to follow us on the community. You are Dave.Slusher, correct?
I am Dave.Slusher in the community, yes.
I am the one and only Chuck Tomasi, a.k.a. C. Tomasi. If you want to give me an app mention, I'd love it. There's also some other things you can follow us on, email and Twitter and whatnot. If you've got any questions, throw them through that channel. Until next time, we're going to play the music and end right on 1 hour. See how close we can hit this when we look at the final video. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. We want to sign out with a big happy smile face with a no screen share. Take care, everybody. Bye.